You know there's only one man big enough to run this city.
I deserve a better life.
I'm working on it. Trust me, it's just the beginning.
Episode 1 of The Penguin, After Hours, opens up 1 week after the end of The Batman, with the complete flooding of parts of Gotham and the assassination of Carmine Falcone. The show was focused on the power vacuum left in Gotham now that its head mobster is gone and his biggest rival, Sal Maroni, is locked up. Enter the Penguin, in this universe named Oz Cobb, who's now intent on seizing power while he has the chance. In the opening, we see Oz stealing sensitive documents from the Falcone safe before being caught by Carmine's son and now head of the family, Alberto. After sweet-talking his way to safety and after some conversation and drinks, Oz impulsively shoots Alberto dead in a rage, brought on by Oz feeling belittled and humiliated by Alberto. It's an excellent scene that sets the foundation for the emotions which drive Oz throughout the season. His need to feel important and to be adored is so pathological that it drives his every decision in life. Upon the confirmed death of Alberto, Luca, Carmine's brother, takes over as head of the family and Oz recruits the young lad Victor as his right-hand man. Meanwhile, Sophia, Carmine's daughter and Alberto's younger sister, has been released from Arkham, with some questions for Oz and the rest of the family. Episode 2, Inside Man, focuses on the double-crossing antics of Oz as he plays both sides of the Falcones and Maronis. Although things don't exactly go to plan when a Maroni capo who knows of Oz's double dealings is captured by the Falcones. Oz obviously needs to keep him quiet and has a plan to plant some incriminating evidence on Johnny Vitti, the Falcone's second-in-command, and have the Maroni capo implicate him explicitly. But when Vic fails to plant the evidence in Vitti's car, Oz has to rethink his strategy. It's at this point that I think we really see the first weak scene in The Penguin. Oz knows that the capo knows that his best way out is to give Oz up to the Falcones and hope they release him for his honesty, but the way Oz chooses to handle the situation is absolutely baffling. Rather than suffocating the Maroni man to death, which would leave the Falcones assuming that he simply died from his pre-existing injuries, Oz inexplicably decides to go on a stabbing rampage, which could only implicate someone inside the house, including himself. It's a really stupid move which calls into question the character's intelligence, and it's not as if it's the same situation in which he killed Alberto, as that was a crime of passion spurred on by what we come to learn are Oz's core trigger points of belittlement, humiliation, and feeling like an outcasted nobody. This was simply a tactical error, and it was an objectively bad decision from a supposedly clever character. Suffice it to say that, in the end, Oz does manage to get himself out of the trap he'd set for himself by pinning the murder on one of Sophia's men, but this lapse in decision-making really did bring me out of the show for the rest of the episode. Episode 3, Bliss, then introduces us to the Seasons MacGuffin, a new drug called Bliss made from the pharmaceuticals prescribed at Arkham which induces sedation and euphoria, and which Alberto and Sophia plan to start trafficking and dealing in Gotham. This present-day story moves forward the plot of the show and strengthens the alliance between Oz and Sophia, but the real highlight of the episode are the flashbacks to Vic's past. Who he was, what he had, and, crucially, what he lost. It's a brilliant exploration of how circumstance can substantially alter not just a person's behaviour, but also their mindset. Vic was a typical teenager who hung around with friends, was grown into a romantic relationship with his first girlfriend, and who had plans to capitalise on the hard work of his family to better himself and give back to that same family. A family and a life that was stolen from him, ripped away by decisions and systems outside of his control. Back in the present, Vic reunites with his old flame and finds himself at a crossroads. Either run away with her and attempt to reclaim some semblance of his old life, or stay with Oz and fight for a new life free from the shackles and systems which bound and ultimately destroyed his family. A life which he believes gives him true freedom and control. Vic makes his decision, and in the final scene makes a heroic rescue of Oz, who alongside Sophia had been captured by the Maronis. Episode 4, Centani, is an absolutely excellent episode, and by far the best depiction of not only Arkham Asylum, but in my opinion also of the deep-rooted corruption embedded within Gotham City as a whole. We have of course seen this done well in other works, such as in the Nolanverse, but for me this is by far the most intense, impactful, gut-wrenching, and most mesmerising depiction yet. We watched this episode completely frozen for the entirety of the initial introduction to Arkham sequence. The complete derailment of a previously sane, rational person into a cognitive husk of their former self. It was genuinely outstanding. Arkham is a truly terrifying environment, one in which you can't trust anyone at all, especially not those in positions of power and authority. One in which the more you try to show that you're sane, the more those assessing your sanity question you. The corrupt ones because they know you're likely to cause more disruption to their operation, and the honest ones because it's not what they expect, which in turn makes them more wary. They expect insane people to act insane, and so when one doesn't conform to type, it's uncanny, unsettling even. This episode was genuinely excellent, a near flawless episode, with the only exception being that you have to ask why the Falcones didn't simply put her back in Arkham to avoid the trouble she was inevitably going to cause them. But still, for me, it's by far the best of the season. The episode ends with present-day Sophia taking her revenge on the family by gassing the lot of them. And honestly, after witnessing what they put her through for 10 long years, can anyone really blame her? Unfortunately, after the triumph of episode 4, we drop off precipitously in episode 5, Homecoming, which in my opinion is by far the worst episode of the show for plot holes and contrivances. Because there are so many issues with this episode and we don't want this video to take an age, we're going to just straight up list the issues. But to do that effectively, we'll first need to outline the plot in a bit more detail first. This episode picks up after Sophia massacres the entire Falcone family, sparing only Johnny Vitti. While the police half-heartedly investigate, Sophia has Vitti, the now de facto head of the family, locked up in a mausoleum on the manor grounds. Once the police have wrapped up, which by the way seems to happen remarkably quickly given the murder of what must be a dozen or more people, Sophia lets Vitti go to serve as her underling. However, upon receiving some backchat from Vitti during the first meeting of the new family, now called the Gigantes, Sophia puts one between his eyes and takes her place as the official and uncontested head of the family. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Oz has made his move on the Maronis by kidnapping the not-so-bright black sheep of the family and holding them for ransom. The son, in exchange for the bliss-inducing shrooms. Unsurprisingly, at the meet-up, both sides set a trap for the other. The Maronis with men lying in wait, and Oz having doused the hostage in petrol, or gasoline for our American friends, which he uses to set the son and Mum alight. Oz and his man get away with only a small amount of the mushrooms intact, and Oz then heads to Vic, who's hiding Oz's mum in Crown Heights, the flooded district of Gotham where both men grew up. The episode ends with Oz coming up with an idea for his new base of operations, the old Underground Railway. Now, onto the list of shame. Deep breaths, everyone. First, the fact that Sophia let Johnny Vitti go and trusts him not to turn on her is baffling. But what's even more baffling is the fact that he actually doesn't turn on her. I mean, why doesn't he? He's the next in line. The men know this to be true. They've been taking orders off him for years. And Sophia leaves Vitti alone with the men. So why does he not just order them to kill her? Over in the meet-up, the suggestion that the Maroni mum didn't smell the petrol, as she seemed to have absolutely no idea what the son was doused in, is ridiculous. She must have been suffering from that
unspecified virus of unknown origin.
The fact that mum and son both combust within seconds is confusing. It's almost a reenactment of the petrol station scene from Zoolander. Oz allowing the Maronis to choose the location of the meet. Why? Oz not bringing more men with him. The Maroni men having the shooting accuracy of stormtroopers.
Have we ever hit anybody with these guns?
I hit a bird once.
The Maronis not having their men surround Oz, rather than just attacking him from the front. The mushrooms still surviving despite severely adverse conditions and despite the fact that we're being told that they need to be kept in very specific and stable environments. The prison guard making his presence known to Sal before attacking him just so he could say, "This is for Oz." Sal being able to stroll out of prison just because he has a set of keys. Even if we allow that he has guards on the inside, why didn't he just escape earlier? Did not one guard not on his payroll see him? He also had a knife wound, so it's not like he would have been particularly quick or stealthy. Sophia finding Sal instantly in his hideout. It's never explained how. Oz not having an escape plan for his mum, which I just don't believe given his character and his obsession with the safety of his mum. He has a to-go bag, but no plan of where to actually go to. In addition to this, Oz is at his lowest ebb we've seen all season, which honestly just doesn't make any character sense to me at all. The Falcones are dead, save for Sophia, and Oz just cut off half the head of the Maronis. Even with Sal alive and somehow out of prison, he should be jumping for joy. But he acts as though this is his all is lost moment.
The all is lost moment!
Even at the beginning of the next episode, he acknowledges he's in a great position. Vic bringing Oz's mum to Crown Heights, the most dangerous place in the city. It's said that this is because neither the Maronis nor the Falcones control the territory, but it's riddled with other lower level gangs looting and causing chaos. Could they not have simply left the city for a while? In addition to this, both Vic and Oz know the mum isn't mentally stable and that she tends to wander off and draw attention to herself. Not something you want in the most dangerous neighbourhood in Gotham. In addition to the addition, upon arriving, Vic immediately spots Squid, a gang leader he used to know and whom he even used to work for, and he instantly panics. But rather than moving to a different neighbourhood, he decides to sneak past them and set up shop in a building in a territory that it seems that this gang owns. Vic knows he can't come and go as he pleases without being spotted, so why choose this place?
Not a great plan.
I know they wanted Oz and Vic close to the sewer system Oz used to use as a kid, but Oz has the epiphany when he sees the coin. This could have happened anywhere, such as in a motel outside the city. The epiphany would have then driven them back into Crown Heights out of necessity. I think that's probably enough negatives to cover for one episode, so we'll leave it there. In episode 6, Gold Summer, we see an improvement in terms of a massive reduction in the frequency of plot holes and contrivances, but unfortunately for me, it was also the weakest episode in terms of entertainment and emotional impact. It feels on the border of filler, which for an 8-episode season just shouldn't be possible. Sophia is on the hunt for Oz, managing to track down Eve, Oz's favourite hooker, who gives up his location upon learning that Oz was complicit in the murder of several women she knew at the hands of Carmine Falcone, and which were ultimately blamed on Sophia. Oz gets his Bliss operation up and running in the sewers, and Vic has a predictable run-in with his old gang leader, Squid, whom he has to kill to stop him from turning them in to Sophia and Sal. Overall, this episode could have offered a lot more, and it should have. First, there's no reason given as to why Oz didn't recruit Squid and his gang in the first place. The episode opens up with them saying that they've recruited smaller gangs up and down Gotham. So why not recruit a prominent gang on your doorstep for both convenience and as a show of goodwill? We also get a speech from Oz delivered to the heads of the other crime families, which for me just doesn't work at all. Zhao, the head of the Triads, asks Oz how they can trust him when he's betrayed both the Maronis and the Falcones. A legitimately good question, but one for which Oz has no answer. He could have offered explanations such as that these people aren't worthy of loyalty, that this is something Zhao should know all too well as Falcone strong-armed the Triads out of their own territory in the past, that Oz is loyal to the people who are loyal to him and those he knows he can trust. Now, this wouldn't be true, but it's a good rebuttal nonetheless. Instead, Oz simply ignores Zhao's question but nevertheless still manages to convince everyone anyway. It's lazy writing. Relatedly, in later episodes we see the seconds in command of these families turn on their bosses in favour of Oz, but in my opinion we never really know why. There's no grounding of this arc. This episode was perfectly situated to focus on the build-up of Oz's relationship with these men and women, which would have made these later scenes far more impactful, but this opportunity was, in my opinion at least, wasted, which ultimately makes these arcs relatively weak. In episode 7, Top Hat, we see an in-depth look into Oz's past, that his clinginess, his obsession even, with his mother caused him to kill his brothers in horrific fashion. Although it's been clear from the beginning that Oz is no saint, episode 7 really does an excellent job of revealing just how much of a monster he really is. In the present, Sophia kidnaps Oz's mum and Sal captures Oz and forces him to reveal the location of his Bliss plant. This genuinely is another excellent episode, although again, it's not without its faults. For one, Oz's fight with Sal was just a bit anticlimactic for me. I get that it was aiming for gritty realism, and another chance to show Oz's internal desires and idiosyncrasies, which we see in reaction to Sal's death. But after the building up of Sal for the entire season, to see our expectations subverted with the showdown ending in Sal dying of a heart attack was just a bit of a letdown for me. But way more egregious was the end of the episode. Not only did Oz invite Sophia into his base of operation, rather than meeting her literally anywhere else, because as far as we're aware, she doesn't actually know his base's location. Oz and his men stand around with their thumbs up their asses after Sophia's driver comically jumps out of the car and sprints away.
Hey! Hey!
My first thought was, it's obviously a bomb. But Oz slowly approaches anyway, and upon realising that it obviously is a bomb, rather than shouting bomb to his men while he runs, he somewhat inexplicably runs away in silence and allows more of his men to be killed. For yet another inexplicable reason, the men continue to approach the car slowly, not at all concerned that their boss just fled in terror. While the men are busy exploding, Oz manages to escape to the surface where he's captured by Sophia's men. It's a poor end to an otherwise brilliant episode. The final episode, A Great All Little Thing, opens up with yet another outstanding flashback sequence. These really have been the highlight of the show for me. It's revealed that Frances knew all along that Oz killed his brothers, that she saw him as the devil, and that she even went as far as requesting that the local gangster Rex kill Oz before she eventually changed her mind. Although it's a flashback sequence, Deirdre O'Connell reprises her role in the flashback regardless of the anachronism. I think this is a testament to her work on the show, which has honestly been second to none. For as brilliant as Colin Farrell obviously is in the role, Deirdre O'Connell has honestly been my favourite performance of the show. Her transitions from lucid to confused and fierce to afraid as expressions of her dementia would give Joe Biden a run for his money.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to
She's brilliant throughout. In the present, Oz wakes up as a prisoner of Sophia, who reveals that she knows about his brothers, which means that Frances does too. Oz staunchly denies everything, and so Sophia proceeds to torture Frances to compel him into honesty. But Oz's pathological obsession to please his mother won't allow him, even if it means she'll suffer the consequences. Eventually, Frances explodes into a rage and attacks Oz, stabbing him in the gut before she collapses from a stroke, which drives Oz to escape his bonds. The whole sequence is great, providing yet more depth to Oz and Frances' relationship. Unfortunately, the action scene that follows is again weak. Sophia's goon was standing far enough away that he could have just pulled his gun from a distance, but instead he slowly walks towards a now freed Oz without his weapon drawn and predictably gets his ass kicked, gets degunned and then killed. In the meantime, the other gangsters take cover while Oz has enough time to waddle over, pick up his unconscious mother and carry her off to safety. It's such a shame because the scene leading up to the action was once again excellent, but the direction of the action scenes just doesn't meet the same standard as the rest of the show. Oz then makes a deal with a crooked councilman to hand over Sophia as the culprit responsible for blowing up Crown Heights, which is made possible by all of the seconds in command for the other crime families turning on their respective bosses and switching their loyalty to Oz and Victor. This is another weak point of the episode, as there just hasn't been anywhere near enough justification made for all of the lieutenants turning on their families. Episode 6 would have been the perfect opportunity to explore exactly this subject, but it feels squandered, and this storyline comes across as insubstantial, which is disappointing. The rest of the episode is, however, typical brilliance from the show. After achieving everything he ever wanted and becoming Gotham's lead mafioso, Oz's high is demolished after he learns his mum has fallen into a vegetative state following her stroke, from which she'll likely not recover. The acting from Colin Farrell is superb as always. We then see Oz complete his transformation into the Penguin, murdering Vic in cold blood so as to remove any familiar leverage his enemies might attempt to hold over him, before giving his mum what he always promised her, a penthouse overlooking Gotham. The latter scene is confirmation, if it were needed, that Oz really does only care about himself and how he thinks his mum feels about him, not how she actually feels in reality. Frances asked Oz to kill her if a disease ever completely took over her body or mind, to which he reluctantly agreed. But now the time has come, he doesn't care about her wishes. In fact, he seems content to keep her locked up in a tower, locked in her own body, where he can imagine that she's proud of him for giving her everything he ever promised. And then we find out he's doing a lot more than just imagining. He's now paying Eve, his preferred hooker, to play the role of his mum, telling him that she's proud of him and that she loves him. She wears the dress we see in the flashback. On the night she attempted to have Oz murdered as a child, he's rewriting history. Oedipal complex doesn't even begin to cover it. Freud would have had a field day. His obsession with Frances and need to be adored by her is so strong that he needs this reassurance from her, even when he knows it's not real. We then pan out from Penguin in his classic comic garb, which looks great, and we end on a shot of his penthouse with the bat signal shining in the sky. A great end to an overall great show. So, is the Penguin as good as everyone says? Well, mostly, yeah. It's an excellent show that I'd definitely recommend. Although it has its flaws surrounding its action set pieces and the various speeches that in my opinion don't quite work, these faults are overshadowed by the mostly terrific dialogue and the fantastic acting. Although I will say that the show does suffer from a massive Batman-shaped hole. And this is not to say that I wanted to see Batman in every episode or even in any episode, but in the end, this is a show which takes place in Gotham, and I think it needed just a reference or two to the Dark Knight throughout. Perhaps showing how some territories are now no-go zones for dealers due to sightings of the Bat, that gang members are even getting scared to go out due to the ferocity with which he's been doling out justice. But these issues aside, The Penguin is definitely my show of the year so far. We're going to finish off these reviews with some quick ratings of each important aspect of the film. First, the plot. The plot of the season as a whole was great, Following Oz's rise through the ranks to become king of Gotham's underworld was an experience, and some of the individual plots, especially episodes 1, 4, 7 and 8, were excellent. But as we've covered, the season also has its share of plot holes and contrivances, as well as weak arcs such as the Lieutenant Rebellion, and because of that, the score for plot has to be lowered to 7.1 out of 10. For world building, this element was excellent. Gotham is as gritty and real as we've ever seen it, and the portrayal of Arkham in particular was spectacular. The only aspect that didn't work for me was the lack of grounding for the 11th hour rebellion by the seconds in command across the various crime families. This needed more work to be believable and to really feel impactful, and the total lack of mention of Batman feels out of place for a show situated in Gotham. Still, world building gets a 8.5 out of 10. For dialogue, this is really a game of two halves. The conversations between quite literally every character were fantastic. The evolution of the alliance turned discord between Oz and Sophia is brilliant to watch, as is Oz's almost equally tumultuous relationship with Victor. But the standout by far is Oz's interactions with his mum. These scenes were heartfelt, heartbreaking and just fascinating to watch. The only issue with the dialogue for me comes in the weakness of the several speeches that come towards the latter half of the season. But thankfully these don't diminish the writing too much. 8.8 out of 10. For characters, this is a win pretty much across the board. All characters are key to the plot and all are hateable and intriguing in equal measure. The only issues are the contrivances that pop up in certain episodes, such as Sophia letting VT go and VT not capitalising on his freedom by getting rid of Sophia and taking his place as head of the family. 9.4 out of 10. In terms of acting, this is obviously spectacular. There's not much to say other than we're giving it a 10 out of 10. For direction, this was mostly brilliant, providing solid pacing, a suitably dark tone underscored by a shifting colour palette which bathes the wealthier parts of Gotham in a subtle gold hue, and the underbellies of Arkham Asylum and Blackgate Prison in an oppressive blue-grey colour. Again, there were issues with the squandering of episode 6, the rushing of the rebellion of the crime family's lieutenants, and the janky nature of the action set pieces, but overall, direction still scores 7.8 out of 10. Finally, genre-specific elements. This was the toughest one to judge as there are arguably 3 genres here: crime, drama and superhero. But we'd argue that superhero isn't really a genre at all, and that it's actually more of a subgenre or even a medium, but that's a discussion for another day. Suffice it to say that as a crime drama, The Penguin hits the mark. 9 out of 10. Overall, The Penguin receives a total score of 8.66 out of 10. Despite its flaws, it's still a show I'd highly recommend. If you like this video in any way, shape or form, please feel free to like, subscribe, comment and all that good stuff. See you in the next video. Ta-ra.